Hey guys, Emily Muchanti here. Welcome back for video number 4 of the Supporting Paraprofessionals in Reading Intervention series. I am Emily Muchanti. I'm here to walk you through our next video, which is covering academic vocabulary. But before we go any further, make sure that you like and subscribe so that you don't miss anything. We have a lot of things going on here. Our new website is ready to go in just a few days, theparapros.com. Hopefully you'll come by and join us. There are going to be some worksheets that'll go along with this video series to help you take a look at your programs and projects and what you're doing and see how you can maybe see if there's any room to improve. And hopefully you will go along with us for that. All right, so in just a second, slide deck coming. Okay, so here we are with our video number 4 in our series of supporting paraprofessionals in reading intervention and helping to make you a more confident and knowledgeable para so that you can do your absolute best work. And also, if you're a teacher working with teams of paras and you're building your own program, this is a great place to start. Make sure that you send this video to all the people, the decision makers, and those that could possibly benefit. So here's what we are looking at in this series. We know that we will do better when we know better. And right now we're starting where we are, and that's absolutely okay. That's where every single kind of change comes from. But it begins with knowledge and knowledge in the content that you are teaching. And in this case, it's specifically to reading intervention, our struggling readers. After we get this foundation of knowledge built up, what we really want to do is move into how do we build instruction, lessons, and instruction that is explicit and direct, because this is what our most struggling students need. We don't need this discovery learning. We need to be taught and to teach those kids exactly the skills that they need in the deficits that they have so that they can go on and close some of those gaps that exist. And then finally, we need to make sure that that instructional toolkit is really full for our paras, because it is important to be a responsive instructor in any kind of situation, classroom teacher, small group instructor. And so we want to make sure that there's plenty of strategies there to help. Now, the 5 pillars of reading intervention that we are supporting in this series are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, academic vocabulary, and comprehension. And again, today is academic vocabulary. This is really about helping our kids to understand words in academic settings. So what is academic vocabulary? Well, these are words that are used in academic settings or contexts. And when we learn about vocabulary, we see that there are really 3 tiers of vocabulary. There's tier number 1, which is our basic words, our conversational words. This is the language that we use informally. We use it with our friends and our families out on the playground for our students. But our tier 2 vocabulary are words that are necessary to be successful in an academic setting. And that means that these might be words that they come across in some of their content areas, but more specifically, it's the language that we use when we speak very professionally, more formally. This is the type of language that kids will see on tests. And so these are words that we need to make them familiar with. Now, our tier 3 vocabulary words are really specific to content areas. And these might be words that are kind of low utility, meaning that we won't see them very often, but when we see them, they are in certain subject areas. Like math has a whole vocabulary all its own, as does science. And so those domain-specific words are our tier 3 words. Now, for today's presentation, we're going to kind of talk about more that tier 2, which is really where the academic language falls in and getting our kids familiar with how to use and build this type of language. Now, again, these are not commonly used words in informal language, and these are necessary words for them to find success across the subject areas and across domains. So looking again at our Scarborough's rope, how does this fit into reading development? Because it always comes back to this diagram, and it really combines language comprehension, our vocabulary knowledge, but also helping to make our kids more strategic so that if they have difficulty with a vocabulary word, they have some tools and strategies that they can use in order to get over those difficulties. And so that, again, we get to the be all end all of reading, which is to comprehend. So what does it look like with our typical readers who are strong in vocabulary? And these are your students that are going to read across a variety of genres, different texts. They might have, they might love nonfiction, fiction. They might like historical fiction. They might like history. They might read comic books. They just read a variety of texts for different purposes. And this is something that good readers with strong vocabularies will do. They also will have something we call word consciousness. And this means they are aware of new words, different kind of words, difficult or challenging words. They may even take an interest in it. These could be your kids that say, hey, this is a new word. What does this word mean? And they would also take what they already know about related words, using the roots, using different affixes, suffixes, and prefixes in order to make relatively accurate predictions in what these words could mean. Now, on the flip side of that, we have our struggling reader who is weak in vocabulary skills. And so what do we see with that? Well, when you have a kid read and they blast through a word and they decode it into some almost gobbledygook, and it's just this nonsense word, and they don't stop. They don't stop because they don't know that that's a nonsense word. Their words, they don't have enough vocabulary under their belt to understand when words are real words and sometimes when they're not real words. And so they would also exhibit some limited vocabulary when they're speaking and in their writing, because they're limited in just the sheer number of words they're exposed to. Now, your struggling readers with difficulties in comprehension will also, or difficulties in vocabulary will also struggle with comprehension. And that is they just don't have enough words with enough knowledge in order to apply into these contexts so that they can make sense of it. And when too many words are unknown on a page, you lose the meaning. So these are some red flags we want to keep an eye out for. Now, why do we focus on vocabulary? Well, you've probably heard of the Matthew effect. And the Matthew effect in related to reading goes back to the old adage that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And what that means is that good readers like to read. They read a lot. They read for entertainment. And so over the course of their academic careers, they read more. And just simply by that fact, they put more words in their brain. They are exposed to new and more of a variety of vocabulary. And so they are adding to their vocabulary all the time for years. Now, the other side of that is a poor reader is going to do anything to avoid reading. It's like me with jogging, anything to avoid it. So a good reader will continue to add words and to get better and better. A poor reader will try to avoid, will read less. And because over time they are exposed to less words, less content, the gap and what we call the achievement gap starts to widen. And so something we have to do as educators to help students through this is to build their vocabulary so that they have more tools. So one, they will want to read more, because the more they read, we know, the more words in their brain, the more those words can then connect to comprehension, and the better readers and comprehenders they're going to be. Now, academic vocabulary in particular is kind of a little bit of an abstract concept to kids, and where some vocabulary we can show pictures and we can make things very concrete. With some academic vocabulary words, like words that you'll see on tests, are very abstract, like summarize, clarify, identify. These are words that we see all the time in tests. And if students don't know what those mean, they just are going to get stuck right at that point in the test. And so we want to expose them to these academic vocabulary words, tier 2 words, for that reason as well. It will help with assessments, which will give us more accurate data. And then here's a little pro tip. It's really important that we teach kids new vocabulary very, very explicitly. We want to stay away from this discovery learning of vocabulary when we're talking about our struggling readers. Struggling readers don't have enough prior knowledge with vocabulary to make this a good strategy. And so we have to explicitly teach a word. Here's the word, here's the meaning, here's what it looks like, here's how we use it. So remember that the next time you find yourself going, who knows what this word means? We want to get rid of that phrase in our interventions. It is not a good situation to put our students in because they don't know. And then what'll happen is kids will start saying things they think, and so often they could be wrong. And so we want to teach them explicitly and correctly right from the beginning. So what can we do about this if we've got kids that are struggling with academic language? Because we know with knowledge comes power. And here are some strategies that really do work. They work in a variety of settings, in your classrooms, in your interventions, at home. I love sentence frames. And sentence frames, as you can see in the top image, is where we give students a sentence with some missing words so that they have the proper grammatical structure in order to use a word or to define a word. And these are great not only for writing, but also for verbal responses. I've seen many skilled teachers in their classroom have up on the wall these oral responses or verbal responses so that we always have kids answering questions in complete sentences, sounding more academic when they speak and more professional and more formal, moving them into that tier 2 type vocabulary. Another thing that's really great for teaching vocabulary is using word maps or diagrams. There's something called a Freyer model, which is the image at the bottom here. And you can see sometimes I used to call it a foursquare, where we break a piece of paper into 4 parts and we talk about the definition of the word. It might be the word in the context. It might be an image of the word. It could be examples, non-examples, parts of speech. There's a number of different things that we can use when we're diagramming words so that we just bring attention to this. Great way to make things very explicit. And again, super important. With vocabulary also, don't forget the importance of repetition. It takes a crazy amount of exposures to a new word for kids to actually utilize that word in their everyday vocabulary and usage and know it. So this is not a one and done kind of strategy. This is something that as you're teaching words, you want to review these words every day so that kids get more and more exposures to them, because through those exposures and repetition is where that knowledge is really going to start to solidify. And then finally, use images or video when you are teaching words, especially any kind of concrete words. This is really great because it gives kids an image to grasp onto. It makes things very explicit. Images are so important. So we need to have a moment and talk about English learners here, because English learners have a unique situation. In my experience in my interventions, a lot of times my English learners, They're great at decoding. Their fluency is astounding. And typically these are my Spanish speakers because Spanish is a phonetic language. And so they transfer these phonetic skills very rapidly, but the vocabulary is far more difficult. Our English learners will pick up tier 1 vocabulary rather quickly. This is the language to get what they need. They'll be able to ask for a pencil or to use the restroom or to do something. They can ask for things, they can communicate on the playground. It's the tier 2 vocabulary, the academic vocabulary, that can be not only very intimidating, but very difficult to teach. And so what we want to remember with academic vocabulary is we have to provide as much scaffolding and support as we can. And this is where images and sentence frames or response frames, stems, if you've called them stems in the past, those things are wonderful, wonderful tools to get our English learners to be able to start using language fairly early. There is a silent phase with our English learners, and the research is kind of, there are different years. I've heard anywhere from 5 to 7 years for an English learner to become proficient to that of a English as a first language student. And so we want to make this silent phase go by as quickly as possible. And the sooner that we can get our English learners to use the vocabulary by providing scaffolding and giving them a safe support, the more quickly they will progress through that development. Now, it will help, it will speed up over time, and it will help them to assimilate into the language. So what should you use in your interventions, in your RSP programs? Let's look at some curriculum, because remember, one of the things that I have a big red flag is any kind of a program that is just geared toward intervention, because it encompasses so many different things, and they're usually super expensive. I am of the thinking that I want to find some really good targeted supplemental materials where I can pick and choose and fit with my students' need. And so these are some that I have used and I really think are great. First is Take Aim. Take Aim is a great vocabulary development program. If you're familiar with Read Naturally, I know a lot of RSP programs use Read Naturally. Read Naturally are the publishers of Take Aim. So it's similar in format. It's a great program. Words are repeated through units over the course of these 4 books or 4 stories. There are images involved. It's a very great systematic program. I've seen some amazing results with this. This is something I've always used with my 4th graders on up, but you could use it as old as you need it. For English learners in particular, and I'll say this, English 3D is an English learner program, but oh my gosh, it's wonderful for any student at the secondary level or 6th grade, perhaps maybe even 5th, that are struggling with their vocabulary. Great program. The sentence stems and frames are already built in, high engagement text. It's wonderful. Now, Kate Kinsella, who's actually the author of the English 3D, also has a program called the Academic Vocabulary Toolkit. And she is the guru. If you are struggling with what to do with vocabulary, or in particular with English learners, Dr. Kate Kinsella is the go-to person. She is amazing and has so many wonderful supplemental programs out there that will help. So take a look at that. And then finally, wide reading is probably the best way to build vocabulary. And so taking our kids to the libraries, still reading with our students, still talking about vocabulary and language, and making sure that they are exposed to a variety of words in a variety of contexts. We still want to make sure that our instructional time is used wisely and we're actually instructing but this wide reading and getting kids to read at their independent or instructional level, what they want, is always valuable. So what do we do with all of this? And remember, this is a conversation that you have with your team. This is nothing that is meant to be a person in isolation. As a para, you are an important part of a team. If you are a teacher or an admin who is trying to build a team, again, do and have these conversations with your team. So the first thing you need to look at in this area is, what curriculum do you have? What are you using? Is it a good program? Are you happy with it? But really, do you know how to use it? So many times, and we're all guilty of this, every single school, we get excited, we get money, we buy something and we say here, and there's no training involved. And sometimes they sit on the shelf. So this is a time to take a look at what you have and what you can use. If you know how to use it, bonus. That means you can either say if it's got a lot of potential or if not. And then again, always, no matter what you are instructing with, you have to progress monitor. So let's talk about that again. Progress monitoring is important to make sure that the instruction that you are delivering to your most needy students is actually working. We don't have time to wait till the end of the semester or the end of the school year or for the next IEP to come along to see if the instruction is working. The kids are already behind. We need to accelerate learning and not wait. So progress monitoring is incredibly important. All programs come with some type of a progress monitoring tool, and your informal observations are important in this as well. Remember, the point is, if what you're doing isn't working, then you need to change it. If you're doing something and you're getting great results, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay, so at this point, you should probably subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I hope that you'll join me. There's so much more in store for you. I am on a mission to make sure that our paras and our teachers that love their paras are finding resources to build their teams. And the next video is going to be about comprehension. You definitely don't want to miss that. And take a look. By the time you watch this, our website might be up and running, and that is theparaPros.com. And again, if you don't know about me, my name is Emily Muchanti. I'm a reading specialist. I've been building teams of paraprofessionals for years with amazing results. And I know that paras often feel undervalued, untrained, but I know they hold the key to really reaching more students and building these teams with a really great lead teacher to lead them on the way. That you will stick around for the rest of this conversation. It is an important one. As you know, as schools open back up, we are going to see intervention needs like we've never seen before. Now is the time to make sure that we have training and resources and the model and the mindset to be able to help all those kids that come our way. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Bye for now.